Good morning, everyone. It's Thursday, September 24th. From the San Antonio Express News, my name is Luis Vasquez, and this is your Express Briefing. All of the stories you need to know to start your day. You can expect mostly sunny skies with a high of 89 in San Antonio today. Slammed by storm after storm in an explosive hurricane season, the Gulf Coast will finally get a break. For the first time in weeks, there are no tropical cyclones brewing in the Atlantic. Texas spends among the least per capita on public health of any state, less than a quarter of what's spent in California and New York. That's just one of the reasons the state's COVID data is unreliable. Jeremy Blackman and Kayla Harris explain why current and former state and local health employees feel that way. And now let's move on to our top stories for the day. San Antonio's H-E-B yanked a cocktail mix maker's product from store shelves earlier this year after a dispute over their new name. B Mixed became Swoon Mixers in Texas on March 1st, despite H-E-B objecting to the name change. H-E-B opposed the switch because it uses the Swoon name on its private label ice cream, which comes in more than a dozen flavors, from Texas brownie a la mode to lemon poppy cake. H-E-B is now suing New York-based Swoon Brands LLC for trademark infringement in San Antonio federal court, seeking unspecified monetary damages. Patrick Danner digs into the details of the case for his latest report. Around 8 a.m., before students started their first class, Principal Justin Saunders was in the Somerset High School gym Wednesday arranging neat lines of traffic cones 6 feet apart. It was the first day of a new routine at Somerset Independent School District, a mass testing for the coronavirus developed by Community Labs, a San Antonio-based nonprofit that promises the ability to process thousands of tests a day with results available within 24 hours. The Southwest Bexar County School District agreed to demonstrate the system in hopes the pilot program would speed up the return to classroom learning at its 7 schools. Andres Picon has more on the trial run and the district's effort to stop the spread of the virus. Even as the city begins to reopen parks and playgrounds, the San Antonio Metropolitan Health District is not counting some patients who test positive for the novel coronavirus or starting an investigation to trace their contacts. Even as the city begins to reopen parks and playgrounds, the San Antonio Metropolitan Health District is not counting some patients who test positive for the novel coronavirus or starting an investigation to trace their contacts. If a person has no symptoms of COVID-19 but tests positive for the virus in an antigen test, Metro Health does not count the result as a case or start a public health investigation to track down people they may have exposed, city officials confirmed. In his latest investigation, Brian Chasnoff explains why asymptomatic positives aren't included in the local count and how the practice is raising alarms. Columnist Elaine Ayala writes, quote, "The new documentary, All In, The Fight for Democracy, should be required viewing before you vote in November. It should be required viewing for students from middle school to college. Unfairness has been at the heart of voter suppression. It's not hard to see why voter apathy exists. Suppression is undemocratic, unpatriotic, and un-American, and it's plain as daylight." On Tuesday, a panel on the 2020 Latino vote, put on by the University of San Antonio's University Relations Speaker Series, added to the evidence. Read more about that panel at the link in this episode's description. Be sure to check this episode's description to get key dates and some frequently asked questions ahead of the November election. To keep our readers up to date on the path of COVID-19, the Express News has built a dashboard of interactive graphics showing the spread of the virus in the San Antonio area, in Texas as a whole, and across the United States. We've also created an interactive map of San Antonio for COVID-19 testing sites that don't require a doctor's referral. You can find a link to the dashboard and the interactive map in this episode's description. Next up are your need-to-know headlines. You can find all of these headlines and more inside your Express News subscription. Metro Health officials reported no new coronavirus deaths on Wednesday, as the overall number of cases and deaths continues a steady downward trend in San Antonio. There were 155 new coronavirus cases. 44-year-old Victor Sanchez was shot and killed by San Antonio police after officials say he pointed a gun at officers, making the second fatal shooting by SAPD in 1 week. Sanchez's family and police records tell the story of what happened Tuesday night. San Antonio Independent School District graduates admitted to Trinity University will be able to attend the expensive top-ranked school with no more than $3,500 a year in student loan debt, according to an announcement by officials on Wednesday. Grunt Style, the military-themed clothing company based in San Antonio, refutes a claim from its founder and former CEO that the company set him adrift without compensation or medical coverage. The city of San Antonio has issued more than 2,900 warnings and 237 citations for violating the emergency declarations, according to an enforcement report. We're keeping track of the latest ones at the link in this episode's description. San Antonio political strategist Ryan Garcia was a guest on this week's edition of the Express News' Puro Politics podcast. He spoke about the efforts by Texas Republicans to restrict mail vote access and how he's navigating through this strange election cycle. Governor Greg Abbott on Wednesday endorsed Tony Gonzalez, the GOP candidate running to replace retiring U.S. Rep. Will Hurd, also a Republican, in the 23rd Congressional District. A coalition of Republicans, including Texas GOP Chair Allen West and 6 state lawmakers, are joining activist Stephen Hotze in asking the Texas Supreme Court to block Governor Greg Abbott from extending the early voting period by a week during the pandemic. U.S. Army North said Wednesday that the 740 military, medical, and support personnel from the Army, Navy, and Air Force who deployed to Texas and California in July for the command's coronavirus operation have returned home. San Antonio-based Usio Incorporated stock tumbled almost 29% in early trading Wednesday after it announced a public stock offering to raise $8 million. An outdoor furniture maker is planning to move its headquarters and manufacturing operations from California to the Texas Hill Country. The San Antonio Express News editorial board recommends voters vote for an ambitious workforce development program, improving public transit, and continuing pre-K for SA, writing, quote, "Taken together, they have the potential to meaningfully address endemic poverty in San Antonio and hasten our economic recovery from the pandemic." Tucked away among the thousands of artifacts in the collections of 2 San Antonio museums are a handful of items from the 1918 flu pandemic that illustrates how living through a pandemic is much the same 102 years later. Curators and collection managers at the Witte Museum and the U.S. Army Medical Department Museum at Joint Base San Antonio, Fort Sam Houston have preserved nurses' uniforms, Liberty Bonds, and military orders, among other things. Unfortunately, the Witte items are not on the display and the Army Medical Museum is currently closed to the public, but curators shared information about the treasures with Deborah Martin. You can read her story at the link in this episode's description. The Deerfield house Matthew and Melissa Molina were looking to buy 4 years ago was a sight. Once painted school bus yellow, it had faded to a dull banana color, although the trees and bushes out front were so overgrown you'd barely see it from the street. It's taken the couple almost 2 years to complete everything on their checklist, save the backyard and laundry room, all on a budget of about $100,000. Check out some before and after photos of this 1980s era San Antonio home after its 2-year renovation to highlight its modern Spanish style. With a fire pit and grate, you can make queso, roasted poblano corn salad, fruit cobbler, and more. Check out the link in this episode's description to read Paul Stevens' latest article on how to cook over your fire pit. Express News staff writer David Hinojosa sets up the San Antonio area's high school football weekend in his latest column. Chamoy chicken salad is now a thing in San Antonio thanks to H-E-B. The store's lengthy menu of Meal Simple brand products includes chicken salad flavored with the sweet, sour, spicy, salty taste San Antonians can't seem to get enough of. And that's all for today. This was your Express briefing for Thursday, September 24th. My name is Luis Vasquez. Please consider becoming an Express News subscriber to get in-depth coverage on all of the stories you heard today. Also, be sure to rate and review this podcast inside of your Apple Podcasts app, as it really helps the show. Have a wonderful day, everyone.